All righty. Hi, everyone. I'm Joan FitzGerald, CEO of Data ImpacX.
Oh, I'm Michael McGuire, Vice President of MSA Media.
Fabulous. Well, thanks for joining everyone today. We're going to talk about the exploding complexity of programming research and how to measure it when content is king. As we all know, there has been a huge transition by consumers from traditional linear television to streaming. Boston Consulting Group recently reported that streaming now comprises 35% of total video consumption. Publisher investments in programming have skyrocketed as well to meet the demand and drive the demand. According to FX research, there were 559 new scripted originals last year, an increase in over 300% compared to 10 years ago. Let's look at the then. Content and rights holders licensed programming to broadcast and cable, which distributed over the air and on MVPDs, which are cable operators, satellite distributors, telcos. Now it's a much more complex distribution ecosystem with more VOD options, more live options, more apps, and simply more choices for consumers. Decisions such as windowing were not all that complicated even 10 years ago, where film windows follows established patterns from theatrical to VOD to TV. Now the established patterns for films are gone, and we're adjusting windows for all of our IP, not just films. Monetization came in the form of C3 for advertising or per subscriber fees from the operators. Now we have direct subscriber fees, audience monetization, addressable monetization, license fees from distributors, and ad revenue share models. Metrics have gotten more complicated too, from average audience defined impression to user defined metrics, to digital specific metrics, and a wide range of ad impression qualifiers. Data, even though we're inundated with new forms of data, including first party data, from our direct-to-consumer and owned and operated apps, and second-party data from our distribution partners, the data no longer supports our critical programming research needs. It seems like we're inundated, but the reality is we're not able to make the programming decisions that are critical to our business without changes in how we think about data and how we use it. Content is king, and programming is complex. How do we make the right decisions? Oh, life was much simpler then. You can argue about whether this is good or bad, but the currency provider pretty much covered all of our titles and the titles of our competitors, at least where linear television is concerned. Even though sample size got sparse at times, the data supported basic linear TV programming decisions, from identifying consumer segments, finding opportunity programs and trends, maximizing audience and flow, and optimizing program promotions. Now, we've actually got a huge data issue. There is fragmentation across many more distribution partners than ever before, and sample size break down extremely fast. The data doesn't support key insights into monetization and performance. Is SVOD growing faster than AVOD? Is C3 monetization better than audience monetization? We don't know the value of each of our titles to our distribution partners. We can't see the unexpected, whether our decisions are creating halo and growth or cannibalization and decline. Programming, competition, distribution partners, monetization, and streaming reach are all up. Linear TV reach is down, and there's no unified data to support critical research decisions. We've got a serious data conundrum as programmers. On the one hand, we have third-party currency services that still provide good measurement coverage of linear TV, with some streaming and the convenience of unified data. What's missing? Complete streaming coverage, title level data for streaming, census instead of sample to support our analyses. On the other hand, we have a treasure trove of first and second party data. First party data is the direct consumer O&O data. Second party data is the data that you get back from your distribution partners, like a Hulu or a Roku or any number of streaming apps that may carry your programming. First and second party data is an excellent foundation for measurement of streaming because it includes ad-supported and non-ad supported content, plus covers our own direct-to-consumer apps and our distribution partners. Plus, it's a census, meaning it counts every instance of consumption. Now, that's using some metric, more on that in a minute. And the data is even at the crucial title level most of the time. Unfortunately, there are limitations in that data too. Each data source can have a different metric with different timing and different granularity. The data doesn't necessarily match the publisher's own master data, which is the source of truth for intellectual property. There's usually not any competitive data. It's great data about your content, but not the full competitive landscape. What's the solution? To start, we need to use all of our first, second, and third-party data assets, combining them, harmonizing them, and equivalizing the metrics so that we're measuring as much of the linear and streaming TV ecosystem as we can to answer the increasingly complex questions about licensing, acquisition, distribution, windowing, and monetization. Now I'm going to turn it over to Michael and talk about the process of achieving this goal to harmonize your first, second, and third-party data and create equivalized metrics to make your critical programming decisions.
Thank you, Joan. As Joan highlighted, because there isn't a single source of data for cross-platform viewing, that by definition is going to require a method to harmonize and equivalize all the different data sources that Joan just went over. You can see many logos there as samples on the screen. The MSA solution, by way of an example, ingests close to 100 different types of files, and each of those different files comes on a different timing, has different formats, has different metrics, which then requires different methodologies for validating all that data, as well as equivalizing all those metrics. I think as many of the attendees to this session probably already know or are very familiar with, right? That data that comes from all the different providers, even title level wise, does not look the same as the publisher's master data, and therefore has to go through a matching process. And I think everyone understands how painful a process that can be, given the way that the different data providers provide the data back. And so, to have an efficient solution, there's a heavy focus on automating that matching process to get the automated match rate very high. I think the good algorithms like the ones that we currently provide get to 90+% rate, often very higher. And, therefore minimizes the amount of manual effort associated with it. But because not all titles can be matched in an automated fashion, it's important that the solution provide a very efficient user interface so that any titles that couldn't be matched in an automated fashion can be manually matched, so that they're all harmonized across the different sources to your master data. And once that match process is complete, then the real fun starts. We often refer to it as the methodology funnel, and that methodology funnel's goal is to create all the equivalized metrics so that you can report on this data from all the different sources on an apples basis, even though each of the different sources provides very different metrics. Some partners might only provide the viewing starts, other partners might provide seconds, but it's the total seconds combining both the advertising viewing and the programming viewing. And so depending on what all metrics somebody wants to be able to report on, you have to work on methodologies to separate that viewing into the key components that want to be analyzed. And that's what the methodology funnel is designed to do, is to create the unified data. So making sure every title has the duration, the consumption on the TV set can be, we can account for the co-viewing if that's desired, that we can separate the commercial minutes from the content minutes, and then equivalize all those different metrics so that they can do apples and apples comparison across all the different distribution endpoints. And make better informed decisions in terms of how they're licensing the content moving forward. And then, of course, once you have all the viewing data, another key component of augmenting the decision-making is adding the ability to do better ROI analysis, which, therefore necessitates bringing in the revenue and cost data allocated to each title, so that when going out and deciding which partners to license the content to, the publisher is as informed as possible in terms of the value of their content in each of those different relationships. So taking a deeper look into the methodology, right? Organizations want one source of truth for their data. That's at the core, I think, of what's going on with these types of solutions. And the reality, though, is unfortunate that there are also multiple stakeholders within each of those publishers who want different views of the data. And so, we have a methodology to work closely with all the customers to make sure that we're capturing the priorities of their business, the different business rules they want to have, the equivalized metrics they want to have, the models they want to use in order to get from the raw data to the equivalized metrics. And further, to make sure that our methodology accounts for the fact that the data sources can change over time. Different data sources have different needs in terms of the quality of that data, the completeness of the data, and the general changing of that information.
Great. Thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate that real deep dive into our methodology. Let's see, there we go. So Michael referred to the methodology funnel, and the methodology funnel is comprised of many steps to get to the equivalized metrics. So basically what we're doing for our publisher clients is we're taking all of their first, second, and third party data, their business rules, any survey data they have, and putting them into a methodology that's clear and transparent for the organization, that gives them a baseline and apples to apples comparisons across all of their distribution partners. I'm going to quickly run through a few case studies that showcase the power of harmonized first and second and third party data. The first snapshot in the dashboard is a picture of total audience, where a currency measurement service may only show part of the snapshot, the ad-supported snapshot. A product like MSA's CPX shows the entire picture, including ad-supported and non-ad-supported consumption at every platform and distribution point. This is a really great picture of where the growth is coming from for any of your series or titles. A second snapshot demonstrates analytics around monetization trade-offs. In this case, C3 versus audience monetization. In this example, C3 monetization leverages 50 million impressions at an average CPM at 20 for $1 million in revenue. The question is, should I move this ad revenue to audience or digital monetization? What scenarios are break even? What scenarios increase revenue? From the snapshot, a break even scenario might be enough to move the needle, but a scenario with a lower ad load and still higher CPM can achieve a significant revenue increase. The third snapshot demonstrates how the system can measure distribution partner performance. Distributor 1 is an SVOD partner where 50% of the consumption is from 20% of your titles. Distributor 2 does a better job of delivering the long tail. 50% of the consumption is from 40% of the titles. If you're considering licensing a title with a history of high viewing levels or significant promotional support, you might go with Distributor 1. If you're considering a title from a library of content, you might find that the second distributor is more effective because they deliver the long tail. The last snapshot shows unintended effects. The series was introduced on linear TV, began to show some declines, and then run on streaming platforms. The concern, of course, is cannibalization. What we find instead is a case of 1 + 1 = 3, where the streaming strategy invigorated audience growth back to launch levels, creating a halo effect from one platform to another. The industry has been focused on currency services and currency alternatives, which is awesome, but the focus doesn't necessarily serve the needs of programming researchers. Even though streaming is now 1/3 of total viewing, the data hasn't kept pace. Title data is often missing for the streaming platforms, and many measurement services don't include non-ad supported streaming. So it's tough for programmers to understand the full picture. By creating equivalized metrics across all of the publishers' data, programmers can get a truly comprehensive picture of their audience and answer questions about source of growth, performance of each distribution endpoint, total lifetime value of the IP, and monetization trade-offs. I'll try to avoid making this a commercial about Management Science Associates product, but solutions like ours really do help programmers get meaningful, actionable insights now, maximizing all of their data, regardless of format or frequency or the counting metrics used. And these equivalized metrics enable apples-to-apples comparisons. ROI measurements mean accurate understanding of the performance of each distribution partner, strategy, and monetization model. This new approach enables programming researchers to break down internal silos and support multiple stakeholders across acquisition, licensing, distribution, and even ad sales. With the help of suppliers like us, they can focus on optimization, strategy, and advanced analytics instead of the nuts and bolts data wrangling and cleanup. Over time, the process will improve with more granularity, more precise measurements, higher quality, and more timely delivery. We can iterate and learn. We've heard it all before. Content is king. This has never been more true than it is today. With massive investments in programming, the increase in distribution, endpoint partnerships, and new monetization models. The programmer research job is more difficult than ever before, but they can do a better job with taking all of their first, second, and third-party data and creating equivalized metrics, for apples-to-apples comparisons. Thanks very much. And I'd like to invite everybody to follow up with us in the Q&A that's going to happen after this session.